Shui. Welcome to Reset Diaries. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks, Esther. Very happy to have the conversation with you.
Thank you, and I look forward to it. So, Shui, before we begin, can you briefly explain about your reset journey? As I said, that you had this fantastic career path in Salesforce and you were leading the solution consulting side. And then what happened? What made you quit that and start an altogether new journey, which you are on right now?
Yeah, so thanks, Esther. So today I'm actually the founder of the StrengthsCo. I set up my own training and consulting practice, helping professionals find fulfilling career paths.
Yeah.
Before this, I spent 5 years in Salesforce, as you mentioned, and I think it all started about 4 years ago when COVID happened, and that was the same time I also had my third child. I realized I started to fall sick very often. I fell sick almost every month. I got really edgy and agitated. And at first I brushed it off and say, okay, maybe I'm just busy and this was normal. But I think what really woke me up was when this continued for about 2 years nonstop. And I realized that it was actually symptoms of burnout already. And it took quite a big hit on my mental health sometime back about 2 years ago. And that's when I realized that I'm not happy and something I needed to change. And so I think that was that point. And so after that, that's got me started on this journey of like self-discovery, where I started to explore new things I wouldn't have done, new causes, and meet up with new people I wouldn't have met before. And during this self-discovery journey, one of the experiments you can say that I started to take was I took up this strengths coaching course. And it wasn't meant for me to become a coach, actually. It was just, I wanted to ask myself, what am I good at? And what are my strengths? But I realized through that course, that was the turning point where I realized that, actually what makes me come alive was coaching and helping people grow. And so that got me sort of starting to be curious about coaching, and I started to make more experiments towards this area that I was like following my curiosity at that point. And so that's how I ended up doing this, starting up my own practice. Because as I look back, I realized that I wished I had a more structured approach to approaching my career transition. Because it was very messy back then. It was like, try this, try that. And so if I look back I wish I had a more structured approach. And so as I started the StrengthsCo, my mission was, how can I make career transitions less daunting and not so, and it doesn't have to take so long, right? And waste so much energy. How can we approach this in a more systematic way?
Right. So it's more like how can you craft a playbook for others like you who are navigating a transition so that they don't do it in a haphazard way, but in a
Yes,
structured way. Right.
structured and strategic way. Yeah.
Great. So since you spoke about this strengths coaching, so now I would really like to touch upon this strengths. What strengths are we talking about here? If you can enlighten us a little bit about this whole Clifton strengths approach, what it is, and how particularly in your journey it helped you shift the perspective.
Okay. Yeah. I'll start off with what strength is. I think a lot of people say, okay, find your strength, then you can know what you want to do. I think, and when this comes out a lot, it sounds so easy, but actually it's very, very difficult. And because when I actually run my workshops, I ask people actually, how many of you know your strengths? I'll ask people to raise their hands, and you'll be surprised. Only 10 people will raise their hands who say that they know their strengths. So isn't that amazing how so little people know their strengths? Strengths is hard to know for yourself because you are so close to it. It becomes so natural. So it's very hard to see something that's so natural to you, and you're likely not to think that it's that big of a deal. And so when it comes to knowing your strengths, you need to think of it in as collecting data points about yourself. And so there are 3 data points to think about if you want to know your strengths. The first one is self-reflection. So knowing about, as I think back on my past successes, what actually am I really good at and what makes me energized by? So that's self-reflection, trying to reflect on what happened in the past. The second way to know your strengths is through feedback from other people. So what people say about you and notice you that perhaps you may not know to notice for yourself. So it's sort of like a blind spot, right? For you.
Right.
And the third piece of data that you should get about your strengths is from external research. So that's where CliftonStrengths come in. So these are like tools out there that's based on research that helps you to identify and discover what your potential strengths could be based on some rigorous assessment that you will go through. There are several objective assessments out there. Clifton Strength is just one of them that has been one of the longest in the market. And if I were to just explain what Clifton Strengths is it originated through an American psychologist called Don Clifton. And what he did was he conducted a decade-long study to understand high performers. If you look at all the high performers across different industries like teachers, salespeople, athletes, across different industries, he did a study on what makes these people successful, what makes people high performers successful. And what they found during the study was a set of they split it into 34 traits, 34 talents of people that what makes people high performing. And so what he did was he drilled it down to 34 traits and put it into assessment where someone like you and I can sort of like take it through 177 questions. Right, so that's a lot, right?
Yeah.
And it's meant to test, get your response time as well, right? To see how fast you answer certain questions so that you can sort of like assess what your natural talents are. And at the end of this assessment, what you get is a sense of from your inclination, what are your most dominant strengths that you have and what energizes you.
Right.
And the idea is that you should be able to find work that allows you to play to these strengths because that is your highest area of potential that where you can have a highest career satisfaction.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
so when you did this strengths test for the first time, was there
Yeah.
any strengths that surprised you about yourself?
So I did this assessment 2 times 10 years apart. And
Okay.
most of the strengths were about the same. But one strength that always kept coming out was empathy. And that I think that sort of like surprised me because I used to came from tech. And I feel like I've always been, I didn't realize that I value empathy so much because tech is very like, I was focused on the solutions, the technical details, the product features.
Right.
But I think what I discovered myself is that it showed me that I value the freedom to express my emotions. I value the ability to listen to others express themselves. And so I realized that that was the missing ingredient for me during the last few years of my career, where I realized that strength or empathy couldn't come out as much during work, right? That sense of expression, emotional expression.
Basically, the work didn't allow play on your empathy strength as much as you would like to.
Correct. And I think it's of no fault to the employer or anything. It's just that the nature of the company, the industry, where it's so fast paced. Yeah. And so the very, I think important thing to know about our strengths is that we need to have an environment that supports the development of our strengths. So it's about to find the right fit because if an environment expects me to be a certain way, but my strengths and natural inclination is another way, then I'm always will feel like I'm suppressing part of my natural self. And it's this suppression that would cause a lot of people to feel that, that uneasiness or feeling of sense of stuck. Yeah. So that's what I've learned. Yes.
Yeah. And I also like what you said that you took this 10 years apart. So do you think your strengths can change or do they remain static or more or less that bigger imprint remains the same? What have you seen? I know you're still very new to this practice, but have you heard or come across this kind of observation where strengths change depending on your external environment, depending on the state of life you are in, the age you are in? What's your observation around that?
Yeah, so we look at the brain development of the humans. There's this concept of neuroplasticity, where research has shown that our brains are in a rapid state of growth and development up to the age of 25. After age 26 onwards, our brain still develops. It's just that it isn't as rapid as this very crucial 21st 25 years. And means is that between this age of 25 years, we are very malleable in terms of our to the experiences around us. And so when we look at, let's say, students or like fresh grads who are taking this assessment right now, I would say that if you've taken it before 25, expect it to change quite significantly after 26, where you're still being shaped by who you are. And then after that, age 26 onwards, that's when things start to stabilize. But I would say major life events can still happen. So for example, if I became a new mom, that completely shifted a lot of things. So there might be certain talents become more dominant than the others. But really it's about there'll be certain life events that would bring out certain parts of ourselves that we did not know, and this might be surfaced up in the assessment as well. Yeah.
Right, right. So, Shui, now in your practice and the workshops that you do for individuals and for corporates, so you take this strengths test as a baseline before you start coaching the individual on what path or what transition you take. Am I correct in understanding that?
Correct. Because, yes, correct. So in the corporate workshops I do, before the teams get together to understand each other's strengths, they will take the assessment. For the one-to-one coaching I do as well, those who are mid-career professionals who are trying to find an alternative career path, but not sure what to change to next, I will ask them to do the assessment as well. And that forms like a basis, some kind of language, because it's hard for people to think about what strengths do I have. So at least this assessment is sort of like gives you some starting and base point. But I wouldn't say that it's used very heavily. I would say it's a starting point, and we sort of like add our own life experiences and nuance, layer it right on top of that data, because it is
Right,
just ultimately one data point that we
right.
can use. Yeah.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Okay. So since you're dealing with professionals who are, kind of feeling stuck, so have you seen any kind of pattern in the professionals who feel stuck? Is there something like that which you keep seeing in different people? Is there any pattern like that?
Yes, I see a very common pattern, which is I think the people who are stuck is when they feel a disconnect. So there's a disconnect between their natural self of what they think they bring versus what the job expects out of them. To give you an example, yeah. So I know of a working professional, very brilliant guy, super strategic, very entrepreneurial, very intelligent, very smart. And do you know what his day job was? He was an accountant, right? So very big picture thinking guy, but his day
Yeah.
job was an accountant of trying to tally up, numbers and reports and all these like
Yeah.
detailed tasks. And so
Right.
it's a disconnect because he's naturally wired to be big picture, and yet he's doing very detailed work. And then so this caused him unhappiness for like literally 10 years. But he's good at his work because he's doing day in, day out. But a part of him knows it's not right because there's a
Mm,
side, right? That's been sort of like
mm,
suppressed. And
right.
so what eventually happened was after he discovered his strengths to know that, hey, actually I am a very big picture kind of a guy and that's my talents. Eventually he moved on to a role still in accounting, but he took a role with a 50% pay increment, but he started to lead a team, a go-to-market team, uh,
Oh,
to lead the projects there, but still in accounting. But now he gets to like think about how to enter a new market, come up with a new
mm,
strategy. Yeah.
nice, nice.
And he also started a side hustle as well. So I think I realized that when people know their strengths more and they started to believe in it, the path becomes clearer. They start to identify certain opportunities that allows them to, use their strengths more. I think the problem people realize that they don't realize that what their strengths are. I think that's what keeps people stuck. They know that there's some tension, but they just can't figure out what's that
What?
tension and disconnect.
Yeah. But I like
Yeah.
this idea and this approach, the example that you shared that sometimes you don't know you're operating out of your strengths, and maybe it's your job. The environment is not such which gets you to exhibit those strengths. But nowadays, it's a very common where you can start side hustles. So at least
Yeah.
that part of your strength gets sharpened and you feel more fulfilled and joyful, right?
Joyful. Yeah.
Great. So, Shui, now we'll shift gears a little bit. And I want to ask you now, we are living in this world where we are seeing waves of layoffs across industry. It does impact the
Yeah.
morale of the people, even those
Mm.
who are still employed. it's like a hanging sword because you never know, you could be the next one. So
Yeah, yeah.
do you advise that a thing like Clifton Strengths test can help people gain certain insight into their strengths and get some confidence and at least help them find their next step?
Yeah, I think that's a very good point you brought up. And also, yeah, in this age in this time where there's layoffs happening, it doesn't just affect people financially, it also impacts people like emotionally as well. And that's where I find a lot of the clients that I work with, they feel that they're questioning their worth and their confidence. And so in my approach when it comes to coaching transitions, I always start with the most fundamental, with their strengths, and not necessarily Clifton strength is a tool, but I would say
Yeah.
I start with strengths purely because it helps bring the person back to building that confidence again
Mm,
in themselves. Because I like to say your job can be taken away, your paycheck can be taken away, but no one can ever take away your skills, your experience, and here, right? Your strengths. So it's really important to go back to what I have and
mm,
not what has been taken away. So when
mm,
we look at so when we look at the strengths, one thing I like to get people to think about is to go one step back, is look at your past life so far and tell me 5 stories in your life where you had peak experiences, where you had
mm,
most fulfilling experience. And as they're sharing me these stories, I can see their eyes light up again, right? Because they're
mm,
looking back into what worked well. And so as
mm,
they're telling me stories, and as a coach for me, I'm observing when are the times that their eyes are lighting up. I'm
mm.
observing that when the energy is shifting, when they're starting to like sit up straight, and when they're starting to talk more animatedly. So it's really all these, I would say, non-verbal communication that I'm observing beyond what is being verbal. And we're sort of exploring, we're trying to pick out what really went well during those times,
Mm,
and try to pick out what those strengths are and start to build their confidence again. And I think it's really an emotion thing, because you can think of it like, okay, I do the assessment, I just see this report, but it doesn't really do anything in that negative state that that we can be in. So it's really important to have a talk with someone. It not
mm,
necessarily be with a coach, right? But with someone you trust,
mm,
where you can truly be free to express and think back on what went well before in your life and what strength that you exhibited, to regain and try to remember what is the good in you. And when we
right.
start to remember what is the resources that you have in ourselves, we can start to think about what's next after that. So I think that's really important. The second piece I want to talk about is so once you know your strengths, the next one is you need to understand that in this AI world that we're in right now, all this it's going to level the playing field. So if you're talking
Mm,
about the job application process, right?
mm.
Uh, all the CVs will sound very, very impressive. I mean, even the person who doesn't know how to write really well can make a CV look impressive because of AI. So we cannot rely on the CV alone to stand out when it comes to applying for our next role. So we need to think about what is our differentiating factor. Let's say if I'm a project manager in tech, what makes me different from the 101 project managers who are also applying for that same role?
Right.
If you look at what is your competitive advantage, what is your differentiation, then we need to think about what your strengths is. Because if you know what your strengths are and you craft it in a way that,
You highlight.
um, you highlight what is uniquely you, then that makes you different from the other project managers out there, right? Who with the
Right.
same skill sets. So
Yeah.
I feel the essence of strengths, to sum up again, is to give you that confidence about
Mm,
yourself, but also helps you think about what is makes you uniquely different so that you
right.
can stand out from the others.
Okay, great. So at this point, I will also ask you, have you seen any specific strengths which, help people to navigate these transitions or this uncertainty effectively? Are there any strengths like that?
I won't say there's strengths that help people to navigate. I don't say there's a specific kind, but I would say those who manage to navigate really fast and
Mm,
really well in transitions are the ones that take the time to understand themselves better.
mm,
And I would say being very strategic about where they are best fit for. I see a lot of I see a common mistake where people let's say they're being laid off, and naturally there is a knee-jerk reaction to mass apply, right? The more I apply, the more I will increase the chances of getting something. Yes, but I think we need to realize that if you're doing that, it may get you in the first door if you have a very good CV. But if you are in an interview with employer, the employer can see. They're not silly. They can sense when someone truly wants to the role and thinks they're the best fit, and they can smell desperation as well. And so I think those who succeed in the career transition are those who know themselves really well. They know their value that they bring, and they're being very strategic about their career choices and what they apply for. And so what happens is that when they go for these interviews, right, to these certain roles, they are bringing in a very refreshing energy that you can't fake, right? It's a very, I want to be here and this is what I can do, and I truly believe, right? It's a vibe that you can't fake, and this vibe only happens when you truly understand yourself. If not, very very hard, very very hard. Yeah.
Right. Because you're not coming from a place of desperation, but you are
Yes.
coming from a place of knowing yourself very well, what you truly want. You're very intentional about your efforts. So I think that kind of translates into that confidence in
Confidence. Yeah.
yeah, right,
Yes.
right.
Yes. It starts from the inside. Yeah.
Right. Brilliant. So also, Shui, can someone build any new strengths? So if let's say I decide I want to build this strength because this is the career path I want to take, is it possible to build a new strength like at the brain level? And also, is this something do you recommend to people? Like if someone comes and says, "Hey, I want to, let's say go into e-commerce," and but the strengths are not matching, and you feel that this person should have this strength. So do you recommend that you should build new strengths? What's your take on this?
Yeah, my take is that everyone is born with a certain level of talents or aptitude for certain things. So, for example, I'm literally bad with numbers, but there are other people, who are naturally like look at numbers and they
Yeah, they're like,
just get it, right? They just get it. So I think skills can be learned. So I wouldn't say strengths can be learned, but I say we can build the right skills so that we can do the work. So doesn't mean I'm bad with numbers, doesn't mean I can't be okay with numbers. I can take a course, right, on accounting.
yeah,
So I can build the skills. But will I be
right,
super good at it? It can't be that as good as someone who is naturally gifted with numbers and they can go very well.
right,
And I have to
right.
give you an analogy. So, we all are mortal, we have limited time on earth. And so I would ask ourselves is what is the best use of our time that will give the greatest returns in order to determine what kind of skills we want to build. And so I'll ask you, Esther, like, are you left-handed or right-handed? Are
I'm
you left-handed
right-handed.
or right-handed? You're right-handed.
Right-handed.
Okay, right-handed. Okay, so my next question would be, if I asked you to paint the best Mona Lisa you can paint within the next 3 hours, would you use your left hand or your right hand to paint the Mona Lisa? The best Mona Lisa you can paint.
Right.
Right hand. And why do you choose that?
Because that's like my natural stronger hand.
The stronger hand? Because you have trained it well, you have used it, it's well used, correct?
Yeah.
And so because the task itself is about, there's a constraint of time, which is 3 hours. And I'm telling you that you need to paint the best Mona Lisa in 3 hours. Naturally, you will want to use your most dominant strengths, right, to do it.
Right.
Conversely, if let's say the task was about, hey, I want you to challenge yourself. You can paint the Mona Lisa for like the next 30 years, and I want you to try a different technique. What will you do? You will end up using your left hand. So what I'm saying is it's down to the context of the job. Obviously, you can choose to continue to learn with your left hand. You will eventually be able to build up your left hand proficiency, but I think it's more of like, how long are you going to take? And
Yeah.
what does your job require you to do?
Yeah, and I love this that you said we all have limited time on the earth, limited resources, limited bandwidth, limited time. So rather than working on our weaknesses, it's better to, hone our strengths even better. And this also brings me to my next question, that many people also focus on improving their weaknesses. So what do you think is the best approach? Like, should we focus more on building our strengths even more, or should we focus more on improving our weaknesses? Because I had an interview with a leader and he kept on harping about this point that don't obsess too much about your weaknesses, but rather play on your strengths. So, what's your take on this? What's the right balance?
Yeah. So this is the philosophy I take, which is play to your strengths and manage your weaknesses. Manage your weaknesses. And what I mean by that is the definition of weakness is a weakness only if it gets in the way of your work. And so I would say, for me, to give an example, one of my, you can say my least dominant talents is ideation. So my weakness is ideation. If someone asks me for something, for ideas on a topic that I have no clue about, it actually takes me a lot just to come up with like 2 ideas, like a lot. It's, I know of some people who, even if they have no context about something, someone with ideation be able to, just come up. Yeah, that, right? But for me, it's so hard. It's so hard. I would come up with 2. And part of my work, because as I start to, I'm building my own business as well. I need to come up with new ideas to shape new programs and also find ways to solve certain problems. So ideation is still part of my job scope that I need to come up with new ideas. And so when I say about managing your weakness, is I can't just stick to one thing and just go with it. So I need to be able to manage it somehow. So how do I manage it? I would say 2 ways to manage your weaknesses. Okay. The first way is partner with someone else who is good at your weaknesses. So for me, I do have a thinking partner, great at ideas. So she gives me ideas and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's really good. And I go and implement it. So partner with the right people who are good at what you are lacking. The second way is to find a way to systemize it. So for example, for me, my ideation piece is that I have ChatGPT to help me bounce ideas. Also, when I have a good idea, I will write it in my notepad as well. So I may not have ideas on the spot, but I have a system where I'm tracking good ideas that I've accumulated over time. So, so it's these 2 things, right? Finding partners who are good at what you are not. And then second one is find like a system around it to and help you process this weakness, right? You can go and learn courses or skills to cope with it.
Okay, so one last question about Clifton Strengths before we move on towards the end part of our podcast. I was listening to another podcast, and there was this guy who was saying that it's important also to know your bottom 5 weaknesses or the bottom 5 strengths in, say, Clifton Strengths, because that will also give you a good indicator on, are you by any chance operating out of your strengths? So what do you think? Is it also important to know your weaknesses very well, not just the strengths?
Yes, you need to know. I think so. It's a good gauge to also help you assess why you're stuck in a certain role. So your bottom 5 tells you your potential weakness. I wouldn't say weaknesses, but I would say potential energy drainers. So, and bottom 5 is like, you can do it, but it would take a lot out of you effort to do them. So again, I talk about the example of like the ideation, right? Coming with ideas takes a lot of me. If I spend my whole working day on just ideation work alone, which operates from my bottom 5 strengths, I'm telling you, I will go home and I'll feel drained out. I'll be like lying there in the sofa. I'll be so tired. And so it's important to know and assess for yourself, right? In your work day, your majority of your work day should be playing to your strengths. I won't say that there is a perfect work day that your whole day, 8 hours, you'll be working with your strengths, because there's no such thing. I mean, we all have jobs, but I think it's important to be very strategic about most of your time. I would say a good gauge would be like 60-70% would be good. 60-70% of your time, focus on your strengths. And then you might have some things that you may not exactly love, and that's fine. But you should be net positive in terms of your energy. Right? So your strengths gives you energy, and your weaknesses sort of like drains you. So, but ultimately you should be net positive.
Okay. I love this net positive idea. Brilliant. All right, Shui, we are towards the end now. And I want to ask you about your future plans. You are building this career around coaching. Is this something your long term plan? Do you want to stick to it, or you can still shift gear?
Oh my gosh, I love what I do. I literally tell people all the time that I look forward to work. Like on Sundays, I used to have like, Monday blues and dread, but on Sundays I literally just look forward to like the week. I really can't wait to get started. So at this point in time, and as I'm building my practice as well, I'm loving what I do. And so I can't imagine doing something else. But I will never say never is never. I'm growing as a person, so I'm allowing myself to evolve and I'm open to evolving as well. So that's my philosophy, right? It's like I'm enjoying what I do, but I'm also open to following where my energy is as well, and because I feel that I can do my best work when I'm energized, and I'll do more of. So I will keep following this energy. As to where I see the future, I I want to build a community, a growing community around with people who understand their strengths and support them and giving them opportunities to do what they love. So I'm really starting with my own immediate sphere of influence. So my whole family has done CliftonStrengths. My friends have done, my kids, I've done a child version of strengths with them. So they do know their strengths as well in a more not so complicated way, 34 talents, but they do know. So my personal endeavor is to really help the people I love, right? Give all my to support them and giving them the opportunities to grow, but yet also in the community itself, meaning like my clients, I want to have built this growing community of people who know their strengths so that when the time comes and they need each other, sometimes we need that partner, that complementary partner. They can find each other to, bounce ideas off perhaps. But yeah, in a way, a community that knows their own strengths. That would be my vision.
Love, love it, Shui. And
Yeah.
you made me also do it. So thank you very much
Yeah.
for that. Because
Yes.
of you, now I know my strengths.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. And this was fantastic conversation. Anybody who is completely oblivious to this world of strengths, and ever since I took the test, it also kind of helped me why I enjoy doing certain things in life, because after seeing my strengths, I can see that translation. So I highly recommend everyone to take it, if not for anything, for just your own compass, like to reach your highest potential every day. And as you said,
Yes.
80%, it's good to operate on that highest
Yeah.
human potential. So thank you very much, Shui, for your time. And I really
Thank
wish you
you.
good luck for your new
Thank
venture.
you.
You are doing great. And I hope you build this very sound and strong community in Singapore and help other people as well.
Thank you, Esther. Thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Thanks.
Thank you.